What's the technique of Bo Diddley?
Blues musicians contributed a couple key identities to rock and roll. First, blues is very masculine, and early rock and roll would be an almost exclusive men's-only club. Second, the guitar was the instrument of choice in blues, and many early rock heroes such as Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly would pioneer new ways to play the instrument based upon their skills in the blues. The subject matter of blues music would also follow into rock and roll, from sadness and despair to an often expressed, unbridled lust. Finally, the chord patterns that define blues, that simple 1-4-5 chord phrasing, would be the basis of most early rock songs and many of its biggest hits. Rhythm and blues. Some musicians who were well schooled in jazz actually reached out to the raw, simplistic energy of blues music. Unlike blues musicians who added some jazz sounds and instruments in order to expand the blues music, however, these artists turned the blues into a much more upbeat, fast-tempo, rhythmically complex, more energetic, and bouncier style of music. Whereas blues music often had a very straight-ahead staccato beat, a bump, 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 bump sort of rhythm, until Bo Diddley came along, that is, rhythm and blues got the rhythm part of its name from the much more syncopated, faster and bouncier rhythms of its musicians. In fact, as you watch and listen to the clips ahead, see if you can hear the heartbeat style of rhythm in each song, a kind of bump, 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 giving R&B a heavy backbeat that made it more danceable than the blues. This beat is going to be vital to rock and roll. Ray Charles was an early pioneer, even a creator, as some credit him, of rhythm and blues. Let's take a look at his early 1950s hit, What I Say. And again, listen for that 1-4-5 chord pattern, just sped up. Here's Ruth Brown, one of the earliest and biggest stars of the rhythm and blues genre, singing, or perhaps more appropriately wailing, to her mother about how a man's been treating her mean. Listen to the energy in Brown's voice as well as the passion and fire with which she smacks that tambourine. The music is fast and upbeat, despite the sad lyrics.
Mama,
Finally, here's another big R&B artist of the late 40s and early 50s pre-rock era, Big Joe Turner singing If You Remember. Turner would write and perform many songs in the late 40s and 50s that white artists such as Bill Haley and the Comets and the Beatles would cover, songs like Shake, Rattle, and Roll, as well as Kansas City. You can clearly hear that heartbeat rhythm in his song. You also hear Turner use a similar sort of vocal expressiveness as Ruth Brown's, but in a much more masculine register.
Well, I'm from the country, baby. Get flowed into your bread big town. Well, I'm from the country, baby. Get flowed into your bread big town. Well, I heard about you, baby, and I know what you've been putting down. Yeah. Well, you know I know you, baby. You smoke, you pop. Well, you know I know you, baby. You smoke, you pop. Well, it ain't no city, just a little old whistle stop.
Now hopefully you noticed a couple things while watching and listening to those R&B cuts. A different beat, faster and more bass-heavy, that emphasized a heartbeat-like sound that almost subconsciously drives people to tap their heels, if not get up and dance. You might have noticed how the chords in R&B were the same as blues. Really, only 3 were used in each performance you saw. However, R&B featured a lot more variation, arrangement, and improvisation around these chords than the blues. Finally, you may have seen a few white faces scattered in the various bands or even in the audience, including the Japanese crowd Ray Charles was playing for. R&B gained a wide swath of white fans who were attracted to its fun rhythms, occasionally racy songs like the Big Joe Turner selection Bump Miss Susie All Night Long, and musical virtuosity of these musicians. To these white musicians and fans, the skin color of their musical heroes didn't even matter. In fact, they were even more drawn to them because of their blackness, because many whites saw in black music an escape from what they deemed the conformity, the shallowness, and the commercialistic falseness that was seeping out of their own culture during the 1950s. All of these elements would be crucial to the founding of rock and roll. Country music. The white contribution to rock and roll's mix was country music. Pioneered in the Southeast, in states like Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee, out of what was once folk music from the various immigrant groups, such as the Germans, the Irish, the Scotch, and the English, country was basically a white version of blues music. It tended to deal with the same themes and relied upon the same instruments, especially the guitar, although a banjo was often featured too. During and after World War II, this music became known as country because it was not the jazz and big band music of the city. It was simpler music from a simpler people. By the 1950s, there was a strong commercial demand for country, and many of its artists had become big stars. Perhaps the biggest star at this time was Hank Williams Sr., whom we'll see performing his hit song, Hey Good Lookin'. Williams was such a big deal that he was even the subject of an early Johnny Cash, another country giant song, called The Night Hank Williams Came to Town. While watching, note that the beat is not staggered like R&B, but the pace and rhythm is faster and more upbeat than the blues. It's kind of somewhere in between. Some saw early country music as a kind of whitened version of R&B and blues, a similar musical style without that racy heartbeat-like rhythm that seemed to drive so many teens wild. Here's some Hank Williams.
Hey, good looking. What you got cooking? I'm about cooking something up with me. Say, hey, sweet baby, don't you think, baby, we could find us a brand new recipe? I got a hot rod poured and a $2 bill, and I know a spot right over the hill. There's soda pop and the dancing free. So if you want to have fun,